So I want to talk about writing. I want to talk about writing and leadership because you've written this book, really great book, like Jodah said. And, I know there's challenges to the writing process, right? So, you've talked a little bit about how you got started, but, I think, Jodah and I have talked about this in previous podcasts, that writing about leadership in particular is very difficult.
Yeah.
And so what were your biggest challenges in trying to tackle a subject like leadership and toxic organizations in a narrative book format?
I would say probably like centered around two things. One is, so the role I had before leaving corporate is I led a leadership institute that was responsible for professional development. And so I really was hearing so much from a lot of our corporate leaders that they had a desire to develop. They just didn't have a lot of time for it. So they're working incredibly long hours during the day, and they're going home. They've got family, they got kids,
they got to drink their whiskey.
Oh, yes, they do. And somehow figuring out how to get it all in and read books. And don't get me wrong, there's some amazing books out there, but they also require some really you got to sit and think about them, and you got to have some quiet because there's a lot of words in there. And so when
words are hard. Words
can be and depending on how you put them together, it can be really complicated.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that was really important to me is I wanted to write something that felt like a conversation. And I wanted it to feel a little more, so the tone of the book became very intentional. It was very much inspired by my friend, and we were having this conversation, is how do I make this very easy for people to read and have a moment, I'm not expecting everybody to read it and walk away with massive epiphanies, but hopefully they're walking away thinking about ooh, could I think about this differently? Can I think about myself differently? And also realize you're not alone, because sometimes you find yourself in these situations and you're like, oh my God, nobody's ever said that what do people do when this happens? My favorite is always when people are talking to leaders and they're like, why do people cry? What do you do when somebody starts crying in your office? And because it freaks them out. Because you don't get, there's no training that says, what do you do when somebody starts crying in your office? That's not part of the leadership, leadership handbook that doesn't exist.
Kick them out.
Wait, crying isn't right? Part of the isn't step 9 or something like that in the leadership handbook?
You wish. No, it is not. And I feel like we need a leadership handbook. What is it? Because but it was so interesting to me. So how do I make this very approachable, easy to digest, and still walk away with a tangible takeaway? Because the last thing I want to do is have somebody read this and be like, why did I just read this?
You definitely don't get that.
And what exactly was I supposed to get from this? I'm really not sure what this meant, or, so I really wanted to make it very easy for people. The second thing, though, which is kind of more of a humorous thing, is when you're writing scenario-based books, and a lot of people know you, and it's people get very centered that they think they know who the characters are based on. And the reality is because I've gotten a lot of that, actually. I've had people call me and say, oh my God, the stuff about so-and-so is brilliant. And I'm like, what stuff? Which stuff are you talking about? Because they're seeing, because of the experience that they've had with different leaders, they're seeing things in the stories that maybe I didn't intend. But boy, they really are seeing it. So you start to see how other people that have been in my work environments throughout the years are interpreting it. So that's been fun. I don't want them necessarily to see a specific person or to get distracted by who they think I was writing about. Because it was more of a combination. I kind of took all the trends of the things I was hearing and saying, okay, what are my most common trends? Because the truth is, I have a lot more material than what's in the book.
Oh, do we have another book coming out?
I have to figure out how to use the best of it. I mean, because some of it was just so outrageous, and I know you like outrageous. So one of the things that I heard was there was a leader who all the ringtones for women on his phone were different dog barks. So his wife had a dog bark, his assistant had a dog bark, his daughter had a dog bark.
Was that a subconscious or completely conscious decision?
Yeah,
oh no, he thought it was funny. And so can you put that in there?
No. He didn't get the connection between the misogynistic thing that he was doing, or was he just...
Well, that's a great question. Again, I didn't talk to the gentleman directly, but this is somebody who worked for him. Right.
Right.
And so like, oh, let me tell you about this dude. He was something else, like that kind of thing. And so there's a ton of material that isn't in the book because I thought it was so outrageous and so
You
like
should have like
skewed.
you should have like
I was like,
a second book, like a what's it called? Yeah, an
An
outtake.
outtakes?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Extreme.
that'd be awesome.
But I mean, like, but that being the thing is like, how do I distill it down to something that I felt was most relatable? Because most of those scenarios, people have experienced that, and either they did it themselves, they had it done to them, or they were observers of it. Because that's also we hadn't talked about that, but that's also a component. Is we see a lot of stuff. And what choices do we make as casual observers? Do we race off the bus? Or are we trying to like get in there and try to resolve
Witness
a
trauma,
problem and try to help bring some, so some people will never ever do that. They're going to race the other way and say, fight, flight or flight, fight or flight. I'm off it. I'm out. And then you have some other people though, who are just going to lean into it and say, okay, I'm in. How do we fix this? Like, this has got to get resolved. So, I don't know. We'll see what we do with the extra material. But that was my biggest component was how do I write this cleanly?
Your current book is We've All Done It. Maybe their next one is, but we haven't done this.
Oh, I hope not.
The more extreme stories.
Oh my God.
One of my goals, Kimberly, is to write a book about, my perfect leadership style. And so, but I struggle with it because I drink a lot.
Yes.
So at night especially. So what's your advice to writers like me who might have a hard time getting motivated to sit down at the computer and type those hard words in a row? And
couple things. I would say make sure you know who your audience is. So when you say leadership, who exactly are you talking about? I would actually encourage you to envision specific people because it's a lot easier when you think about writing to a person than when you think about writing to an arbitrary group of millions of people called quote unquote leaders. So get very specific in your mind. Who are you talking to? And is your tone of writing appropriate for the person you're actually talking to? Because I think people we get these vague notions of who our audiences are. And so I would try to get very specific. And I would say this. I know people are going to cringe and eye roll, but you have to write on a schedule. Like I wrote every day and I had a block of time and it was protected time. And even if I only wrote 50 words, it was required that I sit down and think about this product, what am I thinking about? What is this chapter about? Just get words down. But I would also say, and I don't know how it works for other people, but I would have moments sometimes, really random moments where washing dishes and stuff, where things would just crystallize very quickly. And I knew exactly what I would want to say. So I would quickly record myself so that I would never miss something. Because if I waited, I would always forget what the idea was. So I would say always have something with you to capture when the inspiration strikes. But also you do really need some discipline if you want to get it done. But that would be the biggest thing is just know who you're writing for and what are you trying to accomplish? What is your goal?
Can I ask another question for Dan? Because what really was asking is, can you be stinking drunk and write a book? That's what he was wondering, though.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's
how I did
most
my dissertation.
I mean, that may be the best book you could write. I mean, depending, some of our greatest writers, I'm pretty sure, were altered in some way, shape, or form when they were writing things. So,
Fitzgerald, for sure, right?
I mean, yes. So what occasionally,
especially Southern writers.
Yes. I would say alcohol comes in really handy for the editing process.
That way, you're less critical. Yeah. You're sort of a little more just sort of.
You just drink. No, it's like you drink. This is shit.
Oh, you definitely hit the wall at some point where you're like, I have made a colossal mistake and have wasted a year of my life. This is awful. And then somebody eventually will talk you off the ledge and be like, "Oh, stop, Kim, stop it! Like, bring it in, sister friend, bring it in." But yes,
well, Harper Lee literally threw the manuscript for To Kill a Mockingbird out of her New York apartment window into the snow at one point. She was so frustrated.
Oh, okay. So that happens like just in any writing. And this is like the first book that I've written. So I tell people this, like, I did not have this on the bingo card of life. Like, this was not on some bucket list to do. It was an idea that struck, and then I just kept going with it. And as long as I just kept going with it. And I was like, so there has to be some discipline to it, but also, like, if you're not loving what you're writing, then stop. Like, stop, and then figure out, like, are you, like, has what your initial idea changed or not? Or I would also say this: get an editor and surround yourself with other people. So I had a wonderful community of other writers so that I could ping off of, because I hadn't done this before. So it was nice to talk to other people, and they're like, oh no, where are you in the process? Oh yeah, this happens a lot. Like, you just got to push through. And so having some other writers around you is really helpful. And then you can go drink together and commiserate together.
Is there a website for like meeting other writers, or is that how does that happen?
There's a lot of different avenues. It depends on what you're trying to do, but I mean, Facebook has a lot of them.
Does. Lots of writers groups.
There's a ton of writers groups.
Lots of people form writers groups.
And what I would try to do is find people who are writing similar stuff to you. Not because they're not going to steal your ideas, but I think they can be complementary to helping you understand, like, the process. And that's what I would encourage you on, is not so much people, I'm kind of contradicting myself, but find people who've written so that you can help you understand the process, because it's a very lonely thing to sit and write a lot of words and then suddenly sharing them with people. And then, that's probably the most vulnerable I think I've ever been in my life, was when I had to share the drafts of it with other people and be like, so does this suck? I mean, that's really the only question. It's like the little kid, does this suck? Question mark. Yes, no, box yes, box no, box maybe. Because that's a hard thing. Writing is a very lonely process, and then getting it out there can be very intimidating. And so that's why I'm very appreciative when I say thank you. I genuinely appreciate it, because this was definitely a little bit of a labor of love, and you're just kind of putting it out in the world, hoping people don't come back and say, wow, you really suck. And I mean, but that's going to happen. I mean, because everybody views it from their own prism. The last thing I'll say, because this is brilliant. So the woman who designed my cover, who is great, by the way, and I'm happy to give her name, she's Melissa Williams Designs. She's based out of Utah. Phenomenal. She's also a writer. And she told me something that I kept in mind the entire time. And she said, the minute you hit publish, it's no longer your book. It is the book people read, and they're going to look at it through their experience and their prism. It is not your book anymore. So she was like, don't read your reviews. She said, because it's all going to be what stuff you're going to bring up for other people. She also was the funniest person. She said, I thought you wrote because I sent her a copy when we were talking about design. And she said, I thought you were like, this was going to be a self-help book, but you basically wrote a book asking people to admit when they've been assholes. And I was like, yeah, I guess I had.
That's why Jodah likes it.
I guess I did. And she's like, well, it actually is a redemption novel. She's like, it's about redemption though, right? Like, if you do the work, like, you're not really an asshole if you just try to make yourself better. And so she was hysterical. But like, that one piece of feedback from her, I've really held on to, is it is yours until the minute you hit publish. And that it now belongs to each person who reads it, and what they think about it is very different. But that's hard. As I told people, I said, people compare it to childbirth. You hear that a lot. However, there are two people that make a child. There is one person that made this book. So if there is anything that is awkward, weird, strange about the book, it's 100% me. You can't blame it on your significant other, which is what a lot of parents do. Oh, that trait? That's his side or her side.
His genes.
That's
mine.
Somebody else's.
It's his family.
That's somebody else's influence. It's not mine. But this is 100% you. So I would just, find your little community. I'm happy to support you in writing. I want to read this book, quite frankly. I think it'll be phenomenal.
Oh yeah, it's going to be brilliant. It's going to be the greatest.
It'll be the best book ever.
Hey,
it'll be the best book.
Real quick, I want to say
Kimberly,
that I think of just my personal take on your book. Yes, it is a book that highlights when you're being an asshole, but it's a book of reflection. To me, it was one of those mirrors that we were talking about, and it's a great mirror book. You highlight good examples. You give good pauses and questions to provoke people to think about things. So I do highly recommend reading the book. It's fantastic for anybody who wants to see when you're an asshole. But it's definitely a fantastic read and a good read, Tim.